So the next speaker that we're going to bring on stage is Brenda Haggard, and she is a professor for the Entertainment Technology Department at CMU, and she's also is a director for an award-winning theater at Carnegie Mellon as well. And what Brenda has done is she has developed a very unique way to work with executives within companies of all different sizes, all different industries, to really help them with their leadership skills and what they need to learn and do in this new age and what is going on in the marketplace today. So Brenda, can we just put our hands together and give a warm welcome for Brenda? Thank you.
I firmly believe there's no amount of technology that can fix a bad idea. So if you don't know how to create good ideas, putting technology on top of it will only mask what's wrong rather than illuminate. If you know what you're going for, if you know what the problem is that you want to solve, then you'll find the right technology. But learning to create the content from scratch with just your mind, your body, and each other is very, very helpful. Improv, what I'm going to teach you today, is just a really small part of what we do in the ETC. I should tell you, I come from the theater background. I have an MFA in directing from the School of Drama here. I also worked my way through undergrad doing street theater. Now, this is all coming from a Calvinist from the south side of Chicago, who's the daughter of a garbage man. So it's, again, my testimony is a different story, but here I am. And I firmly believe that God has led me to this place, and I love what I do. And we're going to start with an apologetic. It is, can you see this? You might know this. So why do what I do? I hear and I forget. I am always asked to come and do a PowerPoint on improv, to conferences, and I'm like, why? Why would I do that? Because I could tell you all about it, and you'd be like, oh yes, that's very interesting, and you promptly forget what it is that I said. Okay, I see and I remember. I could bring a group of improvisers here, have them perform for you. I could deconstruct what it is that they're doing and how they got there. You would be entertained and you would remember a lot of things, and I'll tell you why you'll remember in just a minute. I do and I understand. I'm going to just lead you through some exercises and some games today that will introduce you to the paradigm of improvisational acting. I am not a technologist, by the way. I don't know anything about technology. However, I have very high expectations for what technology can do. So we're going to have to rearrange the room a little bit. It'll take just a second. Okay, we're going to start with a game that will help you understand what it is that improvisational acting is all about. I'd like you to look around the room, and this is just pretend. I would like you to pick one person who is your enemy. This is just pretend, and do not let them know who they are. Now, I'd like you to pick one other person who is your defender, someone different than your enemy. When I say go, I would like you to keep your defender physically between you and your enemy at all times. Go. Okay, good. Define who your enemy and your defender are, and I want you to quickly make an equilateral triangle. These two games are kind of the microcosm of improv. So the first game is a microcosm of what improv is. If we went and played that game outside, I can guarantee that people walking by would not be able to figure out what you were doing. What they would see is a group of grown adults moving around randomly, but with purpose, right? Because even though they don't know what you're doing, you knew what you were doing. You were following a very simple rule. So the second game is a little more manageable. You could find an end state when everybody is in the proper triangle, and they're all happy with that. And it would be able to end so long as nobody moved. Improv is about constantly being aware of what is going on right in front of you, right here, right now, and responding appropriately. I believe anyone can improvise, but we use it in the ETC to teach you tools for problem solving, okay? Because when you are aware of what's right in front of you and you capitalize on it and you add to each other's ideas rather than judge each other's ideas, you're able to create in a more meaningful way. That's improv. What improvisers do is they tell stories. But most often you just start a story in the middle. And you start a story by making an offer. An offer is anything at all that an actor does, okay? So if I'm walking out on stage, I might okay? Now notice the mood in the room. It's quiet. You're waiting for the next thing. Exactly. Because I've started something. I've started something that has captured your attention, and now you have all kinds of questions. Who is she? Where is she coming from? Where is she going? What is she carrying? Why is she acting like that? Right? And because you have all those questions, you got quiet. And there was an air of anticipation. That's what happens when you tell a story. Now, as an improviser, I don't know the answer to any of those questions. Not yet. But pretty soon another actor will come out on stage and will help me find the story by what we're doing in the space. The other thing that actors do is they make assumptions. In improv, it's pretty essential to make assumptions because you have to figure out who you are, right? In Flipper and Lassie, the humans in the story were making assumptions about what the animals were saying in order to move the plot forward. It's pretty simple. So even though improv appears to be random and somewhat chaotic, it's based on a really solid set of rules. And the rules are something that all improvisers, whether it's in theater or if jazz improvisation, musicians working together, there's a set of rules that they agree to follow. And these are the rules. Rule number 1 is be fun to play with. It's different than having fun playing, because I've been on stage with some improvisers that were having a great time, and we're definitely not fun to play with. Being fun to play with is being the kind of person other people want to be around. Be willing to respect the people they're on stage with, okay? That's being fun to play with. Serve the narrative. The narrative in improv is the story that you're telling, but the narrative in all other forms of work is that which you're working on that is outside of yourself, especially when it's a team. It's the project. If you are working to serve that, then it takes the pressure off of you. It's not about you. It's about that. And if everyone on stage is putting their focus on the narrative, again, it takes the pressure off. You don't know what's going to emerge. Make your partner look good. So your job as an improviser on stage is to be constantly setting up your partner to shine. It's not about you. And if you make your partner look good, you're automatically fun to play with, and then the two of you can serve the narrative. This is revolutionary for many of my students who are accustomed to solving problems on their own, who are wondering, what do I need to do to get an A? And the way we keep these rules, saying yes and, it's called the yes and principle. The yes and principle, let's go back to the woman walking out on stage. So the next person came out and said, you know, hey, Aunt Helen, thank goodness you're safe. And I responded with, I'm not your Aunt Helen, right? I would be saying no to the reality that's been presented to me. And I'd be breaking all the rules. I wouldn't be fun to play with because now my partner is like, thank you very much. I wouldn't be serving the narrative because we couldn't move forward until we figure out, well, if you're not Aunt Helen, then who are you? I'm not making my partner look good. I'm probably getting a laugh at her expense, right? Which is not fun. It's compromising. And furthermore, if we keep doing this, we won't trust each other and we won't be able to create together. So, improvising on a stage without a script is really scary. I don't know any improviser that steps out going, without having a little bit of palpitations. It's exciting at the same time, but there's a really high failure rate. And half the stuff you do, especially, you have to just throw away. It's like, woo, that was really bad. Having that ability to throw away your work is how you become an innovator. And if you try enough times, you'll find an outcome that's really worthwhile. So, the yes and principle. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to stand up and get with a partner. I want you to just practice making offers and assumptions and saying yes. I'd like you to choose one person to start, and I'm going to tell you what I'd like you to do. I heard it was your birthday. Is that true? Well, it is your birthday. Yes, it is. Yes, it is your birthday.
It's my birthday, and
Happy
I'm really interested
birthday.
in celebrating today.
I knew
I
that.
had totally forgot.
I know. It's okay. I remembered. I did. Yeah. So, and I brought you a present.
You bought me a present?
I did. Hold on. Yep.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Go ahead and open it.
That's fantastic. I always wanted an iPhone 10.
I knew you did, and that's why I got it for you. Excellent.
Fantastic.
And I don't know if you got the memo, but it is also my birthday.
It's your birthday? It really is?
Yeah.
No, I remembered that, though.
You did?
I did. I brought something for
Okay.
you.
All right. A box of eggs.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I knew you
Thank
love eggs.
you. These are the farm fresh
Yeah,
kind.
and you can even throw them at people.
I might just do that. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
All right. So, thank you. All right. Now, what I'd like you to do is pretty simple. I'd like you to give each other presents. And I'd like the first person to assume the size and the shape, maybe the weight, but you don't have to have any idea what it is because it's not up to you to figure that out. It's up to the other person to assess the qualities of what you're giving them and make sense of it by naming what the present is. Okay? So go back and forth giving each other presents. Go. So, did you get anything good? Yeah, I could tell by the looks on your faces. There were some very interesting presents. Now I'd like to do one more yes and exercise. Could I have 3 volunteers to come up here? All right, I want you to look on the back wall. See that whole back area? There's a gigantic painting there. Do you see it? We're going to describe that painting for them. And we'll do that by making a statement about what you see. The beauty of improv is that whatever you say is true. You don't want to change the reality. Whatever you say is true. So make a statement about what you see, and you can be sure about it.
I see such little animals on this big painting.
Yes, and it's amazing how they're moving like this direction towards that big object over there.
And that big object is it's a Titanic ship, to my surprise.
Yes, and there's quite an ocean on that side of the painting.
Yes, and it's like the artist made it look like the ocean is rising.
And changing color. It's like the animals are morphing into the water.
Yes, and that's because some are amphibious.
Yes, I see that, and I was wondering if maybe they're starting to drown or transform. I can't quite tell.
All right, really, really nice. Nice job. Okay, the reason I stopped you is because they were starting to get fearful. Whether you knew it or not, that's what was happening. Because it was getting out of your control. You know, when you started, it was like, oh, yeah, I can do this. And then it was like, wait a minute, there's like some weird stuff going on here. And I'm really nervous about creating something so odd, right? It makes me fearful. So then you started using different language. Instead of making statements, you started giving opinions or couching your language in, well, yes, I think it's this way, or maybe it's, because you're like, oh, I don't want to be responsible, right? So it's difficult to improvise. However, if you're serving the narrative, you don't have the responsibility. It's shared. Some other interesting things happened in this. It started to move. The still painting started to have some action in it. When something starts to have some action, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, you suddenly are in story territory, right? You've gone from something still into moving into something else, and that too is scary. It's like, oh no, we started a story. Now what do we do? I'm going to quickly tell you what you need to come up with. There are 4 elements you need to come up with to tell a story. You need to know who your characters are. You need to know what their relationship is to each other. And that's the most important thing. If you get 2 strangers on the stage, it's not nearly as exciting as if you have a husband and wife, right? Or you have siblings. That's a really rich relationship. There's a lot you can mine from that. And there are a lot of assumptions you can make. When you know each other, the story is always more rich. Objective. What is it that you want from each other? And objectives can be short term. I want you to give me that money. Or they can be long term. I just want to be loved, right? Either way, they inform everything that you do in the scene. And the last thing is where. Where are you? That's the easiest thing to figure out. You can just, you can start shoveling. It's like, okay, where do you shovel, right? I've set a parameter there. It's like, okay, I'm either in a garden or a graveyard or on the moon. So you need to name those things, and you need to figure out where it's going to go from there. So let me just share a secret with you. People come to watch actors improvise because they love to see actors in trouble. And that's what happens when you start creating a story. You're like, oh dear, where are we now? What have we done? What are we creating? What you didn't do, which I was really happy about, is you didn't accidentally, and it's always accidentally, say, yes, but. Yes, but is like saying no, right? In improv, we call it blocking. And when you say no to a situation, you can't move the story forward. And saying no is death to story. You just can't move forward. Okay? Well, this is really important in brainstorming. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But yes, but is like negating. And worse, it's passive aggressive, right? It's like saying, yes, I agree with you, but I'm going to totally change it. Okay, so yes, but is the same as saying no, and it's death to improv. Now, another thing you didn't do was ask questions like, is that a ship in the corner there, right? And questions are not as egregious as saying no. We call it waffling. And when you ask questions in improv, it's like I don't want to make any decisions. You make the decisions. You're pushing the responsibility to the other person. Actors act on behalf of us, right? They act on behalf of the audience. They do something so that you can go on a journey that you may or may not have wanted to. I mean, sometimes you walk out, it's like, whoa, I hope that was 2 hours of my life I will never get back. But other times, and hopefully this is the case, you are changed. You've had an emotional experience, because that's, actors go for the heart first, and then you think about it later, right? That's called catharsis. It's an Aristotelian term. But that's what actors do. And they're looking for 2 responses from the audience. Only really 2. One is laughter, right? Laughter is a spontaneous response to something that's happening right in front of you, because you never plan to laugh. You don't say, oh, in about a minute, I think I'll have a really good laugh. Because it's not how it works. It's a response. And the other is, and that can be, sadness, surprise. So actors allow that to happen. Now, if they're good actors, what they want to achieve is believability. That's the role of art in our society. That's the role of art in our lives. It does something for us emotionally that nothing else can. Saying yes and helps you find the reality that you're going to play, to find the story, to move it forward. The together in improv is what makes it work. When you release responsibility for the outcome from each other, you're far more creative. You're far more willing to take risks, to go out on a limb, especially if you've got these rules to back you up. And if you, for a minute, feel like you're being judged in a creative space, you're going to hold back, right? You're not going to take a risk. And you're going to be worried about the outcome because you're going to be worried about what people might think of you rather than what the actual outcome is. And that's all wrong. This is the paradigm we want our students to make part of their lives. You were all amazing improvisers at one time in your life when you were children. Because children do this stuff without a second thought. They take what's in front of them and they make something out of it. They create stories, they create things, and it's to entertain themselves, each other. It's called play. So improv is just organized play for adults. When you are creating and you're not worried about anything else except just playing, it's joyful, it's fun. And it should be. Creating should be fun. So this is the way we should be brainstorming. We need to take an idea, a problem, have a list of questions. Like, what is it we're trying to find out here? Ask the questions. Go with the first answer. That's so important. Because the first answer may not be the best answer, right? Because a second after you say, we're going to market this to housewives, you're thinking, no, the elderly, right? Both are right. But stay with the one, justify it, make it a deeper experience, and do that with each question until you get to the end of the list of questions. Then set it aside and do another one. And set it aside and do another one, right? Our brainstorming most often ends up with someone throwing out an idea and somebody going, I don't know, right? And so it kills all of the impetus for creating, right? If you're fearful of something, and then you start saying things like, oh, I know this is going to sound stupid, but, right? You start to censor yourself before you even get an idea out, or you like say you find an out before you even make an in. Also, brainstorms should be short. It should be short, quick spurts, and then if you're fatigued, take a break, or go out and come up with ideas on your own for a while. It doesn't always have to be a group activity. But adhering to the rules of improv, and especially the yes and principle, you create an atmosphere that people want to be in. And you know they want to be there because they're laughing. They're laughing in response to what's being offered. That's what creating is about. It's taking risks, feeling safe, justifying your decisions, and building on each other's ideas. So learning to look to each other and create a safe space to create is what the paradigm of improv is all about. Okay, just had a question. What's the end goal, right? Is the end goal to have fun, or is the end goal to actually come up with something? I think it's both and. Process should be enjoyable. Product should work. But knowing what your product is going to be only comes from the process, and the more you know what you want to solve, the more you know what your problem is, the better it's going to be. You need to have parameters. You always do. You have to have rules and you set the rules. So at the beginning of a brainstorm, okay, what are we going to decide today? So the question is, how do you create a culture with these rules? You have to start from the ground up. The leadership has to say, this is important. and train them, right? And then, be specific. It's like, no, this is going to be, this is our mission. This is our vision. And here's how it's going to be actionable. What I'd like to introduce to you now is what a story is. I believe everything is story, and story has a role in everything that you do, whether you know it or not. But if you don't know what a story is, it's hard to know how to use it. So when you're telling a story, first is once upon a time. You just got to start. So once upon a time, you introduce your characters. Okay, in the exposition, what we learn is where we're going to be spending some time. Who's in the story? And what's true for them? What can we expect, right? So every day, what happens? What's normal? What's normal? Now, the story hasn't started yet. This is just the setting for the story, okay? And it can be as long or as short as it needs to be. Like if you're dealing with science fiction, the exposition could be the first 10 chapters because, in order to care, you need to understand the world that you're inhabiting, right? So back to that catharsis. You want your audience to care and to believe in what they're engaging in regarding the story. Okay, so that's the exposition. But one day, this is called the inciting incident. Something happens that interrupts the normalcy of the world that you've created in the exposition. Because of this, the inciting incident always has a consequence. This is called the rising action. Until finally, this is the climax, where you figure out what's going on really. And ever since then, the resolution. And then you can add a moral. And the moral of the story is, what the moral does is it justifies the reason for telling the story in the first place. What's really, really important about this storytelling process is that whatever happens here makes it true that you can never, ever go back to the way things were here. There is change, and the change is permanent. So if you understand that about story, you can start to tell stories that have morals and that help illustrate what it is you're trying to say. Thank you so much. Again, thank you for inviting me, and I hope you all have something useful. And I'll give my testimony another time, because it's kind of interesting. All right, thank you.